Hi everyone, it's FSketcher Fashion Drawing Tutorials, and in this lesson we're going to render lingerie. I'm using a template from a June set of templates for level 3 patrons and higher. So you can draw something similar or upgrade or just use your own pose, because we are focusing mostly on the texture. I'm starting from her hairstyle, and I wanted to draw something very loose, Brigitte Bardot style updo. So I'm adding all these different locks of hair. I'm going much higher than the outline of her skull, and a little bit narrowing the shape on the top. Also pay attention that parting doesn't go all the way back, because we're showing also backside hair that has direction backwards, so it's stopping sort of this parting. I'm using dusky pink. For her skin, I'm going to use 3 markers: dusky pink, almond, mid-tone sort of, and for the highlights, ivory. So now I'm using dusky pink as the darkest tone. It's a little bit yellowish, a little bit even orange, I would say, out of all the skin tones of Pro Marker. If you're using different brands, you can match something similar. Next, I'm using ivory, which is the marker for highlights, and I'm covering everything, both dusky pink part and uncolored area. And I'm preparing like the surface. I'm wetting it and also showing the highlights. And while the surface is still wet, I'm using almond, which is mid-tone in this case, and covering area like dusky pink area and beyond. And because the surface is wet because of previous marker, the almond is applied very smoothly, like seamlessly. Whenever I work with the skin, I try to really work faster, so all these markers blend really well. The worst thing that you can have is have just, spots with clear borders and of different tones. It won't look that well, especially if it's not intentional. So again, I'm wetting everything with ivory, and whenever you cover something, especially with a lighter tone, don't forget to cover darker area that you already made too. So you just color everything. And then I'm using almond. I'm working like on the borders between light and dark area. Usually you would use this mid-tone like almond for some shadows that should be, but they are not super dark, like sides of the nose, maybe a lower eyelid, just sides of the forehead, and you would use the darkest marker for obvious shadows like cheekbones or area under the nose. I used my fine liner to show eyeliner, eyelashes, eyebrows, and lips, as I usually do. And usually I lean over the paper when I draw the details, so I cannot really shoot it normally. And now I'm using purple pencil to darken the shadows, to show some details like eyelids, some tiny details of the nose, like the bottom of the nose. So I'm just applying very softly, so you don't see really strokes, you just see you get this blurred effect. And I'm also using warm gray 3 or warm gray 2 would work also, to add shadows under her nose a little bit, maybe also in the inner corners of your eyes, between eyes and eyebrows. And I'm using white ink gel pen, Sakura number 8, to add highlights on the tip of her nose, along her nose bridge, and a little bit also on her eyelids to give this wet effect to her eyeshadows. And just adding a little bit here and there where I feel like I need more shadows with purple pencil. Yeah, whenever you add details, you then might add more shadows, because details usually just distract from everything that you have. That's why actually when you draw, it's better to exaggerate the shapes. Like if you have huge flounces or like skirt, make it bigger, because once you add the details, they will eat all the attention, and visually those elements will look much more plain and less informative. So now again, I'm starting with the dusky pink and showing the strongest shadows. They are related to the relief of your body, like all the prominent parts give them. And then I cover everything with ivory, the lightest marker for the skin. I'm adding more of dusky pink, but because the surface is wet, it's applied much more softer than the first layer that we made. So okay, now I'm going to work with your breasts, because we have a semi-transparent bra, and we will still see the shape of your breasts. I start with dusky pink, then I add ivory, so next layer of dusky pink is applied light and soft, so you can see the difference. Even though it's the same marker, it's applied differently on the wet surface. So again, I'm adding ivory, because markers are alcohol-based, they dry really fast, so sometimes you need to refresh this wet layer. Adding more. You can see I added the fur coat. I will make additional videos, so you can just draw her in underwear, but you can also draw her with this fur coat. So it will be the next video. And adding almond. Almond on the wet surface is applied even lighter than dusky pink, so it's a good transition. It's also a good marker to show, you see, between your collarbones and your breasts, you can see some tiny, subtle depressions. We have that. I'm just showing the rib cage and the effect it gives on the skin. More of the almonds under the collarbone. We have like small kind of holes, and that's how it looks. So now I need to find the centers of your breasts, so to show the details of the bra. She has some demi style of bra, and then like maybe here, making this connection. Maybe make it a bit higher, connecting centers of your breasts, and then making these lines. And whenever you draw clothing, try to avoid straight lines. We are using curves. Like actually for anything, it's better to operate with curves. So now I used warm gray. You can use warm gray 2 or warm gray 1 to color that area. I'm using in the same warm gray to just add shadows along the coat and under your chin. Next we have here some lace. So I'm actually using a bunch of warm grays and cool grays for all these sets, so you can just grab all the grays that you have and work with me. Because it's more like working with paints, I'm picking this one, because I feel like adding more. I'm dropping a little bit the lower strip, and on both sides of these lines that we drew, we're going to have these diagonal strips as well. And between her breasts, we are having these bones. So you don't have to really follow me to extremes. I'm using warm gray 2. You can use warm gray 3. They will give similar effect. And coloring those strips and that area between the bones. So it just needs to be darker. And I'm using warm gray usually for anything black that is transparent, because we have warm skin below, so warm grays work better. And just because we have really thin details, I'm using black fine liner to color everything. And there's strips. All right, so we actually have these separate cups underneath. So I'm showing the borders of it, and maybe I want just to lighten a little bit this area underneath. This I think it's like some mesh that is used for underwear, the black one. And I just want to reduce this intensity of white with ivory on the top of it. Okay. Less of white. Yeah, I'm happy. You might see little difference with what we had, but I feel like now we can feel that there is something underneath. And it's different than that tiny area that we didn't touch between her breasts. I'm using warm gray 1 to color that piece of lace on the top. And we have a little piece also underneath. I'm using warm gray 2 to add some extra shadows here and there. And more warm gray 1, just adding shadows on the sides because we have a cup, it's not something flat. Also want to add shadows to show the shape of your breasts and make that lace a bit darker. So we're going to draw something like this, scribbling, making some prominent parts, but on a much smaller scale. So I'm showing the edges of this lace piece. Actually, drawing lace is very often about scribbling because we are showing it at a big distance. Our model is small, so those things are shown in distance. I'm drawing these many dots, and with a soft touch, not smudging everything, but adding color with, adding marker with dots, using warm gray 2, and adding the same edge on the top as we did below. And with let's use some darker, maybe warm gray 4 to draw this wave, sort of. Try to draw it consistently, so the same width and height. And under each wave I'm adding these dots, and we have let's just darken a little bit. Again, I'm applying by dots so I don't smudge this fine liner, otherwise it will be super dirty. Okay, showing this upper line above the cups. So now I'm working with this wave. So what I'm doing, if this is your wave and circle, you are just adding this scribbling, very irregular one around the circle as well. And again, on a much smaller scale. Don't, when you draw, don't ask yourself, what is this? Because if you ask that question, you will say, those are flowers I see, not I see, but I know those are some floral motifs. But ask yourself what I see, because you can actually see something that is hard to recognize from distance. Some spots, really scribbling, and that's how you draw. You just draw what you see and you get very realistic effect in the end. Okay, so next, dusky pink. I'm working with your hips. Next, I'm applying the almond. Much wider, also covering dusky pink too. And on the borders, I'm adding dusky pink because the borders are wet now because of almond. And covering the rest with ivory. More dusky pink. And working with the other leg. Okay. Almond and dusky pink. More of the almond. Here we have really huge area, so I'm more confident using anything darker. So last step is ivory. More of dusky pink. Okay, here I'm just using almond because I need skin tone under her thongs. And drawing her thong and adding this strip. Again, it's curved sides, also having some like strips. And using warm gray 1 to make the base for this mesh, showing your belly button. And here we go and have a garter. Okay. and stockings with suspenders. And here we have cascading folds. So when I'm making these lines, stretching towards the top of these waves that we create with a pencil. Okay, back should correspond to the sides. More or less it looks like stairs that are following something circular around her hips. Okay, so warm gray 4. I'm drawing the same waves and dots that we used for her bra because this thong is made of the same lace piece. And here we have this edge that we made before. Yeah, that one. And here we have those diagonal strips that we had on the cups. So it's probably like 2 types of lace. And just coloring all these lines around the lace. And in the same way, if you remember this scribbling that we made along the wave and around those circles, just want to darken a bit with warm gray 4. And you can apply the amount of gray that you want, that you like visually. So I'm just following my feelings about how it looks. I actually like some stronger contrast, so it's very personal thing. Making edges the same way as we did on the upper part of the bra. And here we have also that strip. And just this diagonal part. Okay, a bit more of warm gray. Again, following, so I just add more warm gray on the top of these shapes to make them more visible. And then we have this tiny strip of mesh. I'm using warm gray 3 to show it. And now using warm gray 2 to show each of these folds. Mostly, you see each fold is like a stretched triangle, so I'm adding on the sides. And here and there, basically, I will add like tip just after uploading this video to Patreon, so you can see some small exercise on how to apply the shadows properly. And then I'm using warm gray 1 and covering everything. Be careful, avoid coloring on the top of those panties because there is a lot of fine liner and it usually smudges when you touch it with a marker. So to avoid some mess, just skip coloring on the top of it. Since it's black, like it really, if you cover on the top, it won't give any effect. Because it's like the darkest piece in this area. Adding warm gray 2 again to add extra shadows. Not everywhere. And here we are going to have 2 lines, like 2 rows of this strip. So I'm following the hemline first. You can use warm gray 3 for that. And the second row. Follow the shape of the folds. So the strips are also cascading. And I'm using cool gray 5 for this upper piece because it's black, and we use cool gray 5 first to show the highlights. And to make a more clean piece, I'm outlining that shape with black fine liner. Okay. And I'm using this scribbling for both sides of the strips. And then with a warm gray for adding here and there some more shadows, and with warm gray 2 adding shadows also where I feel like it's too light, too flat. Again, as I told you before, after adding details, very often you'll need to add more of the shadows if you lack them. Drawing these dots between those 2 lines. And next, with the black pencil, I need to purchase black pencil as soon as possible. I'm adding shadows here and there, adding some strips to show some tiny folds. And I did the same for the second half. Just work using the same method, but don't build the symmetry. Always try to make it a little bit differently. And the back side, don't forget about it. And here we have some sort of ribbons. I'm drawing them with a cool gray 5, then adding black, leaving some more or less central part uncolored in cool gray 5, so it's a reflection of light, and coloring the suspenders with a black marker. Usually suspenders are like more matte, so that's why I'm not using cool gray 5 and just coloring it directly with black. Okay, So using brown pencil just to outline a little bit her skin. And I feel like after adding the details of her laundry, I feel like we even lacked some shadows on her skin, so I'm adding more with a dusky pink. And some almond. And more of dusky pink. So we showed the shadows. Okay, now some details of the suspenders using white ink gel pen for that. And more of the shadows, just more of the folds on the top. Now let's work with the stockings. We defined the shapes of this upper elastic part, so I'm coloring it with a Cool Gray 5. Since it's nylon, it's going to shine a little bit, that's why I'm not coloring it with black. I want to give a shiny effect. And coloring the second one. And then I'm using black marker and filling in everything except for the central area where we have this suspender attached. And you can see the difference between Cool Gray 5 and black. It just looks like black with the highlights. And on the borders you can use Cool Gray 5. Once it dries, it will be lighter and the transition will be much more smoother. Here also using black. And pay attention to the lines, that I'm using all the curves and you can feel that it's something that is like positioned around the hips. I just added some more or less random shapes with the white ink gel pen just to show that there is a reflection on this attachment of the suspenders. I'm using tan and I'm going to color her skin under the stockings a bit differently. I will make a super strong contrast. Not the same way as I worked with the skin in the upper part. So I'm using tan. I want a really strong difference between dark and light on the skin on her legs. So I'm using a different marker. But if you don't want to add some other marker, you can use the darkest marker that you use for skin and just apply it in several layers. Next, I'm using dusky pink, adding it on the borders between uncolored area and tan, also coloring on the top of the tan. And next, I'm using ivory, the lightest marker for the skin. So now you can see that if it was without stockings, it would be like too much, a huge difference between ivory and tan, and there is almost nothing in between. But that what looks good under some nylon stockings. And adding ivory. And the same for this side. I will just apply some tan, but I will not show the whole process for the second leg because you will work in the same manner as I will show in a bit. We work with with the left side leg. I really thought that this tutorial will be shorter because the garments is smaller, but actually it took like a normal length tutorial. So just let me know how you feel. Do you like the pace of tutorials? Do you like the length? And what do you think of us drawing together? And in real time it takes like maybe 3-4 hours. Are you ready for something like that? Or you want something speedy but with less details? So for the skin I'm showing both legs, but for the nylon part I will show only one side. And also just feel free to write about any frustrations, like what is the most difficult, because I can upload them as a part of the tutorials. We can go through something or as some tips. Next I'm using Warm Gray 2, and I'm going to cover everything. And here it's important that you don't miss any part of the skin of your legs and feet, because we're actually showing that nylon that is surrounding all your skin. And try to get consistent coverage. Okay, so now you can feel already. And you can draw stockings, tights, anything, like maybe you have some overall made of nylon. And next I'm using Cool Gray 4. Sometimes I like just combining different temperatures of gray, so I want to use Cool Gray 4 on the sides and just darkening. If you remember some nylon tights, they are usually light in the center, much lighter, and darker on the sides. Because we have like more flat sides and they are stretched in the center, in the front, especially knees, center of the hips. So here also. And let's add here a bit, just a bit more. And now I'm using black pencil and well, showing the outline and also adding some sort of this blurry shadows as we usually add on the skin, but here you can add more, so more of the pencil on the sides, and I push less and less as I go towards the center, so there is again a smooth gradient from really dark sides to a lighter center. Here I'm using a firm pencil, but you can try using like a wax or oil pencil, because if you want, like, make it a bit faster, because when the pencil is dry it just takes time to get really dark black. And don't do this with wax or oil pencils. I'm using watercolor ones. That's why I'm working with a Warm Gray 2 on the top of pencil and just blurring everything. And then you need to clean your marker. You can do it on a clean paper or just move closer to the center where you don't have pencil anymore, and you will add extra shadows, plus you will add some, you will clean your marker. Now using a lighter gray and just adding extra, and we are done with this side. So pencil, if you have a wax or oil pencil, you can just work with pencil. You'll get a good transition. But if you have a watercolor and dry pencil, you can add marker on the top and just smudge it to the side. So and you work just in the same way with the other leg. I'm just trying to make this tutorial a bit more compact. And her shoes. So let's take black marker and just color everything. So she doesn't have shiny shoes, probably some suede, or probably suede, because it's absolutely matte and light absorbing. And for smaller details, I'm using just black fine liner. Okay, so we're almost done with this tutorial where we covered lingerie and stockings. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something new. If you want to learn how to render these faux fur coats, you can check the other tutorial that I'm uploading in a bit. See you very soon in the next lesson.